Hello and welcome to the Commander's Quarters, your Magic the Gathering source that helps you command your budget. This show and episodes like this one are possible thanks to viewers like you. If you're looking for an easy way to help support this show, make sure that you like, share, and subscribe. Also, hit that bell notification icon so you don't miss any new episodes. You can also go check out our playmats and other merchandise at thecommandersquarters.com. Another easy way to support this show is with our TCG player affiliate links. So whether you're buying a deck or individual cards, you can use this general link right here or one in the description. And the final way that you can support this show is by supporting us directly by becoming a patron. There are many benefits to being a patron, and I truly couldn't do this without all their support. Hey everyone, Mitch coming in for the Commander's Quarters studio. Welcome to the show. So I've worked on quite a few episodes today on some really exciting new Precon Commanders, including this one on Trogdor. Okay, fine. Its name really isn't Trogdor, but I wish it was, and I actually am not sure exactly what its real name is, so for now, to me, it's just Trogdor, okay? Now, although that commander and episode are exciting, don't leave this episode just yet because we've got a really exciting new Bant commander with this guy. And again, like the other Precon spoilers that we've seen today, they're all the Japanese versions, so unfortunately we don't have the translated cards just yet, but there are some translations on the internet, so I went and took some of those and made some custom cards, and here we go. Again, I do just want to clarify that the official translations have not been confirmed, but I'm sure that these are incredibly close, in fact so close that it's basically the exact same thing as what they're going to be. Although I should specify that there's one key difference probably between the final version of this card and this one, and that is the name, which is completely made up. Since the official name has not been confirmed, I just went onto a fantasy name generator, and this is what it came up with. So say hello to Montgomery Hillingham, which, yeah, that kind of sounds like a name for a giant. Maybe, I don't know. Regardless, Montgomery Hillingham is a 7/7 giant with Ward 3, and it costs 4 green, white, blue. Now, on top of it having Ward 3, it gives other creatures you control Ward 3 as well. And then also, when it enters the battlefield or attacks, you choose one or both of the following. Target creature's base power toughness becomes 7/7 until end of turn, and or target creature's base power toughness become 1/1 until end of turn. So there's actually a lot going on here, so let's break it down. First up, again, just a small reminder that Ward is essentially a lesser version of Hexproof. With this and your other creatures having Ward 3, your opponents can't target them with spells or abilities unless they pay 3. So again, although this isn't Hexproof, it is a fantastic deterrent from your opponents actually targeting your creatures. Because if they actually want to target this or another one of your creatures, they're going to have to waste quite a bit of mana just to do so. So, although it's not target protection, it's kind of like a target deterrent in a way. Regardless, the next piece of this commander is actually really interesting. Whenever this ETBs or when it attacks, you can choose one or both. You make a creature very big and you make a creature very small. Regardless, the vast majority of the time, and pretty much actually just all the time, you're going to be choosing that first one on one of your creatures, making it bigger, and one on an opponent's creature, making it smaller. Now, keep in mind that that is base power toughness, so other factors can come into play, but we'll talk about that here in a bit. There are plenty of creatures that can really benefit from getting bigger on our side, and there are plenty of ways to deal with our opponent's creatures once they're much more small and more manageable on our opponent's side. But the first card that I want to talk about actually has to deal with that ward and kind of improving it in a way with Kira Greatglass Spinner. It's a 2/2 spirit with flying that costs 1 blue, and it says creatures you control have, whenever this creature becomes the target of a spell or ability for the first time each turn, counter that spell or ability. So essentially with this and our commander in play, good luck to any of our opponents for dealing with any of our things with targeted removal. Because not only do our creatures have Ward 3, but now also if they are targeted, the first spell is going to be automatically countered. Now, keep in mind that on top of that, this is a flyer, and though it's only a 2/2, again with our commander on ETB or attack, we can make this into a much more deadly 7/7. So, small creatures that you can actually get out early can make a big impact later on in the game, especially ones that benefit you with the more power that they have. For example, Cold Ice Selkie is a 1/1 Merfolk Rogue with Island Walk that costs 1 Simic. It has, whenever Cold Ice Selkie deals combat damage to a player, you may draw that many cards. So with Island Walk, generally we can get through on at least one opponent. And normally we're just going to be drawing one card from this, and that's fine. But with our commander, again, we can turn this into a 7/7, and now it's just hitting for 7 and drawing us 7 cards, which is fantastic. So we can get more damage through and get a ton of card advantage with something like this. And again, that's just for a small 3 mana investment that our commander can make into a much better investment. Speaking of which, let's talk about Cephalid Constable. It's a 1/1 Cephalid wizard that costs 1 blue, and it says, whenever it deals combat damage to a player, return up to that many target permanents that player controls to their owner's hands. That is an absolutely brutal effect because, again, it actually doesn't specify non-land permanent. And bouncing 7 permanents is definitely very impactful, and bouncing 7 lands is pretty much game-ending for that player. So when our commander makes this into a 7/7, we basically just have to get it through once to demolish one opponent. And we'll get to it here in a bit, but we've got plenty of ways to help this get through and to help take care of our opponent's creatures. But another creature that cares about power in a different way is something like Marwin the Nurturer. She's a 1/1 elf druid that costs 2 and a green, and she has, whenever another elf enters the battlefield under your control, put a +1/+1 counter on Marwin the Nurturer. And on top of that, tap add an amount of green equal to Marwin's power. So although this deck is most definitely not going to be elf tribal, unless you really want it to be, you might have another elf or 2 in the deck, but that's not really what matters. What matters is that your commander can make this into a 7/7, and then when you do that, you're essentially adding 6 more mana to your mana pool when you tap it. So again, even when we cast our commander, we essentially almost get all the mana back that we put into it if we just, when the ETB happens, turn this into a 7/7. And speaking of our commander's ETB, make sure you keep in mind again that it's not just on the attack trigger, but it is on the ETB, so blink cards like Ephemerate can be effective. It's an instant for a white that says, exile target creature you control, then return to the battlefield under its owner's control, and it's got rebound. So an opponent might think that they've got a favorable attack against us, and then we blink our commander. It comes back into play, and then we turn their creature into a 1/1, and we turn one of our creatures into a 7/7 and just block it. And we can also utilize blink spells to take advantage of our commander's ETB with things like Wild Beastmaster. By making it into a 7/7 before it attacks, it can be incredibly impactful in this deck. It's a 1/1 human shaman for 2 and a green, and it says whenever it attacks, each other creature you control gets +X/+X until end of turn, where X is Wild Beastmaster's power. So yeah, just by making this into a 7/7 and then attacking, we are making all of our other creatures absolutely monstrous. And speaking of monstrous, one other thing that you might want to keep in mind are creatures that have double strike like Mirran Crusader. It's a 2/2 human knight with double strike, protection from black and from green, and it costs 1 white. So yeah, this low to the ground creature can hit really hard when you make it into a 7/7 with double strike. Again, that's 14 damage, and it might just be able to get through on an opponent with that protection from black and from green. So again, our commander is fantastic at turning up the amount of value that we get from something as simple as this. And speaking of which, it can give us some immediate value on something like Champion of Lambhold. She's a 1/1 human warrior that costs 1 green, and she has creatures with power less than Champion of Lambhold's power can't block creatures you control. On top of that, whenever the creature enters the battlefield under your control, put a +1/+1 counter on Champion of Lambhold. So, Champion of Lambhold can grow throughout the game, but if you draw her later, you can still get her out, make her into a 7/7, and all of a sudden your opponents can't block with pretty much anything. And again, thanks to that adjustment being in base power and toughness, you still get the extra power on top of that with the +1/+1 counters. So, Champion of Lambhold can easily become a giant unblockable beast of a creature. But now let's talk about some ways to take advantage of the other end of our commander's ETB and attack trigger with something like Prodigal Sorcerer. Prodigal Sorcerer is a very simple 1/1 human wizard that costs 2 and a blue that can tap to ping anything for 1 damage. Again, when our commander attacks, we not only make one of our creatures huge into a 7/7, but we also make one of our opponent's creatures into a 1/1. So a pinger like Tim here can just easily take that creature out. So it doesn't matter how big that creature was, now it's just a 1/1, and just by tapping this small creature, we take it out. Of course, there are plenty of thing effects out there, so we can utilize one that helps us out in other ways like Staff of Nin. It's an artifact that costs 6 and says at the beginning of your upkeep, draw a card, and it can tap to ping anything for 1 damage. So the extra card advantage is nice, and again, basically every single turn, in combination with our commander, this is basically, hey, let's take out 1 creature. So that amount of value can add up a lot throughout the game. And speaking of value, if you've got the budget for it, a fantastic card in combination with this commander is actually another commander, and one that's incredibly brutal, with Elesh Norn. Elesh Norn Grand Cenobite is a 4/7 Praetor with Vigilance that costs 5 white. It says other creatures you control get +2/+2, and creatures your opponents control get -2/-2. So first off, yeah, a +2/+2 Anthem can be fantastic for this deck. Again, there are going to be plenty of creatures in this deck that care about their power, like the ones that we've talked about so far. But perhaps more importantly, this is just an automatic, hey, one of your creatures is dying because, yeah, we're making it into a 1/1 on attack, and it gets -2/-2, so it is very dead. So yeah, once this deck gets rolling and gets set up, it's gonna be really hard to stop because again, remember, all these creatures again have protection with that Ward 3. So your opponents are gonna have to dedicate a lot of resources to try and stop you, and even if they try to take out your commander, you might just have a blink spell ready. So yeah, Montgomery Hillingham, or whatever its name is gonna be, is a really interesting and unique commander that can do some really powerful things. It can really utilize value-centric creatures and get a lot more value out of them, and all the while protecting them and himself and helping you take out your opponent's creatures too. So yeah, there's a lot of cool things that you can do with a deck built around this commander. So I'm definitely excited to see how others are going to be building around it, and actually what the name is, because again, Montgomery Hillingham is probably most definitely not it, but yeah, we'll see. And with that, the show's come to a close, so it's my turn to hear from you. So in the comments below, let me know what your thoughts on this episode are, and as always, thanks again and have a good one.